Policing in low-income, non-white communities is finally getting national attention. People from Fresno, California to Ferguson, Missouri are crying out about the various perceived and experienced injustices in light of the police excessive use of force. Today, our guests will share their personal experience, observations, and work to bring healing and justice to redefining relationships between policing and non-white local communities. Please stay tuned. Welcome to the show. I'm Karen Crozier, and today I'm joined with Juan, Ralphy, Avita, who is the state and national president of M.A.P.A, and Reverend Dr. Floyd Harris Jr., who is director and founder of National Network in Action and assistant pastor at New Light for New Life Church of God. Gentlemen, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Great. Let's get right into the conversation, beginning with you, Ralphy. What do you consider to be your own personal observations and experience around policing in non-white, low-income communities?
I think one of the main problems that we see happen, this has been going on for years, it's not new, is that a lot of the policing that goes on, a lot of the police officers who are in these low-income communities, these people who are not of color, are not from the community, so they can't relate and don't know how to even start a conversation with somebody. And years and decades of that kind of policing has created this mistrust with the police department, with police departments across the country, not just in Fresno, but Fresno specifically. I know that in the Spanish-speaking community, for example, they would love to call the police. Sometimes they're afraid. African Americans, young teens, as a high school teacher, I hear it all the time. Young teens don't trust the police. And so part of the problem is that they're not from the community, and when they address young people in the street or people in the community, sometimes they're addressing them in a manner that it's already built up this wall between them, and it's hard to knock that wall down.
So you speak to the issues of how police officers do not know how to relate to the people in the community, and therefore it's this huge wall that is historical, and there's nothing new to the problem. And Dr. Harris, share more about your own experiences and observation concerning policing in low-income, non-white communities.
Well, I believe, Doc, that one of the things is that I have been a victim of police brutality. I think that both of us, me and Ralphie, have a firsthand experience of asked, are you on parole? Asked, are there any guns in the car? Asked, are you on probation? Asked to get out of the car, to sit on the side of the curb when it's 110 degrees, while we have our K9 dogs that work for the police department can sit in the car in the air condition when it's 110 in Fresno. So when we see that animals, and I love animals, can get better treatment than human beings, or not even equal to us, I think there's a problem, and that is going on across America. We address those issues. I believe that all of us should be treated with dignity and respect. You're innocent until proven in a court of law, and so. But right now, we can't even get to the court because we're already prosecuted in the streets, and so there's a double standard process here in America.
Right. You talk about we are already based upon who you are and your black and brown skin. You're already perceived as a criminal.
Correct.
In the ways that you are treated, and that is known as criminalization of black and brown lives and people today. So in light of that, that is one key issue that is being addressed, but what are some other issues that you're addressing around criminalization of black and brown lives and people? Ralphy, you want to speak to that?
Well, one huge issue, and we saw this happen in Ferguson, we saw this happen with Eric Gardner in New York. We're seeing this happen with the Cleveland case, and even here in Fresno. The criminal justice system does us no justice. There's no due process. Here in Fresno this summer, even before Ferguson blew up the way it did, the Fresno Police Department shot a man 17 times, a man who spoke only Spanish, who needed mental health. he needed that kind of help, not to be assassinated. He had a knife, not a gun, and he was quite a distance. And the facts are still out there. But what bothers us about this is that, like Reverend Floyd Harris already said, there's no due process for us. It looks like police are being the judge, the executioner, the whole bit, and it's taking place within seconds, such as the case of little boy Rice in Cleveland. You time that. The Walmart case also in Cleveland. So this criminal justice system is serving two populations, the haves and the have-nots, and a lot of people of color fall into the have-nots. The grand jury, for example, a lot of people don't understand how a grand jury works. I should disclose I have a law degree, so I'm pretty aware of how this works. But you would think that a grand jury, where the prosecutor takes the case to find a simple standard, it is a simple standard, a probable cause, would have the facts. But if you look at the way grand juries are getting these facts from the Mike Brown case to Eric Garner, to you name it, it seems like there is a double standard that's happening when it comes to the criminal justice system. I think part of the problem also involves us who don't register to vote can't be chosen to serve on the grand jury, but that doesn't excuse the courts, the criminal justice system, from being fair. In Ferguson, for example, what I like, though, is that a lot of young people are waking up to this legal system and really questioning it. Why is it that this happened here, but it's not happening here? How is it that this can take place here, but it's not the same here? So they're asking those questions, and that's a good thing. I'm hoping that also our adults in our community will start registering to vote and hopefully serve on these grand juries. But I'm going to go back to it. It doesn't excuse our criminal justice system from serving what appears to be two tales of two cities, a tale of two courtrooms here. And some of us tend to be poor, some of us tend to be of color, and we don't get the same kind of justice.
While you spoke about various issues of voter registration, of jury selection, as well as understanding how can police become more knowledgeable about what it means to serve in the communities that are non-white. Reverend Harris, what are your key issues that you consider to be important in light of policing in non-white, low-income communities?
Well, I don't believe that having block parties is the main solution of giving out hot dogs and a bounce house to say that we have better policing. I think that one of the things that we have to understand, and I deal with history a lot, that we have to understand, where did the police department come from? Through history, you'll find out through slavery that the plantation masters sent out bloodhounds and those plantation masters to go after the slaves, to catch them and to beat them and to lynch them and to murder them and to bring them back, to whip them in front of the other slaves, to put them in place, to say, if you leave, this is what's going to happen. So I'm building up to something here. In 1921 in Tulsa, Oklahoma, you had a black community, a white community, and you had a railroad that divided the two communities. Well, in 1921, the white people had the police department, the black people had no police department, but the white people policed their community and the black community. So when you take it all the way up to 1950, where we talk about the jury selection and the judicial system. Well, M.A.P.A was murdered in Mississippi. Well, that judicial system had an all-white jury, which then turned around and let those 4 white men go, right, that murdered M.A.P.A. Then when you go up to in the 60s, where you had the Black Panther Party, who was in Oakland, California, which is 3 hours away from here, who was policing their community, feeding their community, educating their community, protecting their community, they got assassinated. But yet, when we talk about those that's in this movement, one, you have to know how to read. You have to educate yourself. Malcolm X did not go to college. Malcolm X self-educated himself in prison. So when he came out, he said, the worst thing that the white man could have done was let me read his books, because then he understood what the white man understood, that he knew that he had the right to bear arms in California, just like the police department. But the Black Panther Party was not going out assassinating no one. They were getting assassinated. But yet, when you look at Reagan came in and said, well, you know what? I'm going to change the law. So why would you change the law for a group of people who are protecting themselves, not hurting, but yet you allow this Nazi police department in Oakland to come in and assassinate them and kill their children, their women, shoot up their office and all of that. So it's a double standard in America. And so these are the things that we're bringing to the front of people to question and to look at. Why do we change policy in the middle of the stream? If it's good for you, why it's not good for me? And Reagan was the one who did that in California.
So you bring up two critical issues of the history of policing in this nation, and give a great context of how policing has never been in favor of non-white communities. In your example there in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and how we have always been, as non-white peoples and communities, the target of policing and not necessarily being protected by them. So what is a particular incident that you have addressed? Ralph, we're getting ready to go to the Justice Corner that I'm familiar with on Fresno and C Street and see the two of you in action around what happened in the non-indictments of Officer Wilson and Pantaleo in New York regarding the killings of Michael Brown and Eric Clark.
Grand jury, what good is a grand jury when the cop is going to walk? What else do we got to do to get justice? It was on tape. We seen it. The whole world seen it. What did that grand jury see that we didn't see? What's it going to take for us to get some justice? Black lives matter. Brown lives matter. Poor people all over the world matter. It doesn't matter your skin color. But what the cops got away with is murder. That's why we're out here.
So, Ralphie, share more about what that particular experience was like for you and the people that gathered as you addressed cops killing.
What we managed to do is get people from the stores, their homes, to join us out in the street, and we literally laid on the street. And our experience, and what I was saying in some of that, is that we're all part of have faced these problems. And some people feel that, well, it doesn't affect me. But if you're a taxpayer, for example, you're paying with your tax dollars to go fund death squads and everywhere around the world, whether we like it or not. But that includes also police departments that sometimes don't do the right thing. And so if they're going to be executing us on the street, then people got blood on their hands. They may want to think that it doesn't impact them or bother them or affect them, but of course it does. And if you call yourself a person of God, or if you call yourself a person of conscience, or if you call yourself just simply somebody that cares, then you would be out there with us, because that's your tax money going to fund what we consider assassinations of people before they've even been tried in a court of law. In addition with that, we managed to get people out there who wouldn't normally have joined us. People brought their kids because they saw the signs and they saw what was going on, and they were happy to see that we were actually doing something in Fresno. Now, this is not the first time me and Dr. Floyd Harris here have done this before, but this particular incident was interesting because there was a genuine concern from many people who never done anything like that, and people were just going to join us. To me, I know to you too, but to me, it was inspiring, because at least you get the message out. It's going beyond just those circles you normally talk to.
Right, and Reverend Harris, what was your experience of addressing what had happened in the non-indictments of those officers?
Well, for me, Doc, I had a vision to create that corner called the Justice Corner, because we want justice, and I believe that Malcolm X said it best, that we have to get justice on the sidewalk, because we're not going to get it in the kangaroo court system. And so therefore, when something happens here in Fresno, the Valley, California, across the nation, or even internationally, and Brother Ralphy, who's the international president of M.A.P.A, and I'm the international president of National Network in Action, when we blow the bugle, people understand, because we have built that credibility and that character and that trust with the people to say, hey, something is going down, be here at 6 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 3 o'clock. And so, there was some father flying out of Chicago had emailed me and Facebooked me and said that, it's time for us to come out of the four walls of the churches. Well, those who know me, I'm always outside the four walls of the church. So it wasn't nothing new to me, right? I'm just glad he called me. And so so I, at the last minute, sometimes last minute things are good to see what type of juice you really have in the community. And it was good because of the turnout at the last, within 24 hours. We made the call out, and the community came out, 60, 70, 80, 100 people came out, people getting out of their cars, and people walking by, and people crying, and homeless people coming to see the effect that this has put on them. But I think the bigger piece, Doc, is that I was out there in my robe, and it was on a Sunday. I just preached, and so that was an indication for me to the community that there is an institution in Fresno called New Life and Light Church of God. And I respect everyone who don't believe in God or do believe in God or whatever their spiritual base is. But for me, it meant a lot to the community from African American standpoint for our people to see, and our people, especially black folk, to see that there's a pastor out here in a row. Is he crazy, or is that some kind of costume? Is it Halloween, or what's going on? And I was just, I had the same energy as I was in the pulpit preaching.
Like you do now.
Right.
We're going to have to take a break.
All right.
And come back, and we'll talk more about how your faith and spirituality inform what you do and how you don't see it separate. We'll take a break and be right back.
KNXT thanks all its loyal viewers and respected businesses who have supported your Catholic television station. Now you can support KNXT with program underwriting by having your name, your company's name, or organization associated with your favorite program. Detailed information about you or your company will appear before and after each program or day part you select. Keep the quality and spiritual message alive and make a difference. Call 559-488-7440 today or go online at knxt.tv to find out more about program underwriting on KNXT.
Welcome back to the show. I'm joined today by M.A.P.A President Ralphy, Avita, and Reverend Dr. Floyd Harris of National Network of Action and Assistant Pastor. Before the break, we were discussing how your faith and spirituality informs what you do and engage in this issue of policing in non-white, low-income communities. We're getting ready to see footage of you in action, Dr. Harris, as you were out there, as you said earlier in the show, in your robe, and sharing, proclaiming, visualizing for people what faith in action means in the public sphere. Please give more attention to or detail of what does it mean for you in your faith and spirituality to speak to this issue.
Well, I think for me right now, when Dr. King was here, matter of fact, he marched in Fresno, I believe, to Ratcliffe. I believe that Dr. King got out of the pulpit, out of the four walls of the church, and went on the sidewalk. I believe that he gave people hope. He gave people a sense of understanding. He gave people a sense of, hey, I'm not so good to just sit up in the church and be protected by the four walls, but I can get out here with you, and I can march with you and talk to you, and you can touch me, and you can see me, and we can dialogue and cry and laugh together. And so for me as a Christian minister right now, I believe that's very important. I believe that if more of our religious institutions would get out of the four walls and come outside down the street with our people, I think that we can have a better social change and dynamics of our community. And so it was kind of unusual when people were driving by at the stoplight looking at me. They were kind of looking at me kind of weird, like, why is this guy out here in a preacher robe on a Sunday evening? But we get justice on the sidewalk. I believe that I was sending a message to everyone that I'm not the usual preacher that you usually looking at on Sunday morning, because I preach with a newspaper and I preach with the Bible in the other hand. And so for me right now, it works for me. Again, I respect everyone's belief or non-belief in religion or non-religion, but at the same time, I believe that what I do, collaborating with the different groups, collaborating and partnering with the different groups, that we have built a coalition right now in Fresno with this movement against police brutality. And I'm telling you right now, there's folks from the Bay Area, from Vallejo, from Stockton, from LA, they're going to occupy Fresno because that's what we're doing right now. People are tired, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, I'm tired of being sick and tired of being messed over, kicked around, talked about. I want to be treated as a decent human being.
Thank you, because as you were in the middle of the street and surrounded by people who were saying no more, as you quoted Fannie Lou Hamer, I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. You were able to lead a coalition of different peoples from various faith traditions and non-faith traditions, and I thought that that was beautiful in the stance you was taking. And when they locked arms under your leadership, I thought that that was beautiful as well. Ralphy, with you being there in that site, in that space, share how your spirituality or faith helps you or motivates you to deal with the immensity of the problem of police brutality.
Well, I was born in Mexico, so I was raised traditional Catholic, and you're taught right from wrong. You're taught, all these great lessons, and then you go to school and you learn about the Civil Rights Movement and Dr. Martin Luther King, and coming out of the church and going out into the streets, and you hear about all these changes that were made. What's been frustrating. Afterwards you go to college and you don't see the churches involved as you read about them in the books, and you're led to believe, hey, this is how it's supposed to be. So there's something frustrating about the fact that in the last couple of years you haven't seen many churches involved. And yet in 2006, for example, the evidence is there that you had the greatest walkout in high school history, protests going on over immigration. There was legislation about to be signed which would have criminalized all these people in the country who are here, quote unquote, illegally or undocumented. But it was the churches. If it wasn't for them who got the word out, that mobilized the people, the Spanish-speaking preachers, pastors. They were the ones that were able to get people out there and make families, give them the okay that it's all right to protest, to stand up against an injustice. That kind of legislation would have criminalized families, would have broken up families. And to see that happen in 2006 was beautiful. But bring it back to Fresno. Floyd Harris here, he could have stayed behind those four walls, but he didn't, and he hasn't. That's why me as a president of M.A.P.A, I've been very, eager to call on him and happy to call on him, because he's not just my brother, out here fighting with me, but also I know that he holds a position that unless people like him go out there, some people just won't listen. He brings legitimacy to that, and we need more people from the churches to take, a stand against injustices. And that day, I believe it made a difference, the way he was dressed, the way he was preaching, and the way we're all locking hands, the way we were taking action. And yes, under his leadership, a lot of people said, there's a guy preaching there. I got all these Facebook remarks about, there's a guy preaching there. Well, yeah, there's a guy preaching there because he believes in justice, just like, he's been taught to believe in justice according to his religion. And by the way, we had non-believers, we had Muslims there, we had Christians, we had a wide variety, we had Catholics. It was interesting because I noticed the same thing. But I think that if you stand up for justice and you're a person of the cloth, you can make great change. I know I felt it that day, and I'm hoping to see that in the future and that continue. We've had some problems here in Fresno because, and not just in Fresno, but throughout the country, where sometimes people take money, churches take money, people in charge of the churches take money, so they don't want to rock the boat by calling out leaders, political leaders, or police officers. And that's the frustrating part. That's why I'm going to go back to that frustrating part. That's what frustrates me is I hope more people start looking towards making that change instead of making that profit for the church, because that has been going on for a while within many churches.
Right, you gave a very great articulation concerning the challenges of doing this work when the church has played pivotal roles in times past, in the immigration instance of 2006 you shared, as well as the civil rights movement, as well as other important facets of American history. The church has a prophetic role to play, and our spirituality is not separate from justice. What do you consider as we look at changing the reality? What is your vision for transforming the relationships between non-white, low-income communities and policing? Reverend Harris, what is your vision? What would you like to see take place?
Well, one of the things, when Pastor Jessup was here from the Unitarian Church, the partnership and collaboration that we had built together was for him to bring his church from up north down south, so that you can mingle and see and talk and feel, and for me to take my congregation down south up north into his institution. And I believe if we can exchange, right, exchange services. You know, he come and preach in my church on Sunday morning to predominantly African American crowd, but it's multicultural because everyone is there. And then I go up north to his church and I preach to his parishioners. And so I think that when we see each other in each other's community, it sends a message when and even in the immigration piece, that our African American children, I heard language saying, oh, tell your mama to go back to Mexico, or tell your daddy to go back to Mexico. But when they see me and Brother Ralphy sitting there talking and networking and hugging and embracing one another, that sends a presence and a message to the children to say, wait, if they can talk, work together, why can't we talk and work together? So I would like to see People's Church come down to Southwest Fresno, not to a traditional church, but to a non-traditional church, and for us to go up north to those churches up there, because we're one community. Alan Autry said it best. He said, Fresno is the tale of two cities, the haves and the have-nots. And so we know who the haves are. It's up north. We know who the nots are. It's south of Shields. And so I think that if we're going to build community, build trust, let's have a real conversation. Let's have a real dialogue, not no imitation conversation, no orchestrated conversation, but let's come in the room, have a real conversation, put all the cards on the table, and let's talk and dialogue about how we can really build a good race relations community with the police department, because Pastor Jessup had police officers in his congregation.
Well, thank you, Reverend Harris. Ralphy, please, in 30 seconds or less, what would you like the people to take away who are on the viewing side, the viewing audience, and what has been shared today?
I think that we should be encouraged by the youth that are out there of all races, black, white, brown, yellow, who are out there marching for peace. And we should take away from the fact that they're actually demonstrating to us how it should be done. So I'm encouraged by their activism, by them, standing up, and through the use of social media, they've really taught us adults a few lessons as well. And we can't give up on the youth, because ultimately they're watching us. We got to carry ourselves right, but ultimately they're watching us, and I'm encouraged by them.
I appreciate that word. 15 seconds or less, Reverend Harris, what would you like the viewing audience to take away with from the show today?
Stand for something. Stand for something.
That speaks volumes. May we all stand for that which is right and pleasing in the sight of our God. We thank you for watching today. Take care and God bless.